Good evening. Welcome to the Hingham Board of Selectmen meeting of Thursday, January 3rd. I hope everyone had a great holiday. We're glad to be back. Our order of the agenda this evening is to have approval of minutes. Any questions or comments from the public about items that are not on the agenda? We'll have a public hearing on a transfer of liquor license of Shack Foods of Hingham LLC, doing business as Summer Shack, to Legal Seafoods. We will have a petition for a change of manager for Weber Restaurant Development, doing business at Scarlet Oak Tavern. And we will have another petition of change of manager for the South Shore Lodge 1850, doing business as Sons of Italy. Then we will have an update on the status of the Hingham Contributory Retirement Fund by the board. And then we will entertain the Government Study Committee, who will be here to present 3 proposed articles for town meeting that they are going to be recommending. Then we will have a budget hearing that we did not have before the holiday. The town accountant office and various budgets that come under that aegis will have a hearing on those budgets. And that's our agenda. So first I will ask about the approval of minutes. Are we ready to approve these various minutes?
Well, I understand it's just the 29th or the 6th and the 11th? What minutes?
Well, we have the 29th, 6th, 11th, 13th, 18th, 20th, and 21st have all been sent to us.
Yeah,
so the question
that's what I
is,
thought, but the vote said the 29th. But if it's all of them, I'm in agreement.
I'm up to date. All right.
Yep.
I am too. I've
Okay,
given
so-
all my comments and.
Yep. Okay, so let's have a motion to that effect.
Do you want?
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to vote to approve the minutes of November 29th, December 6th, 11, 13, 18, 20, and 21, 2012.
Not the 28th, that's fine. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's, I'm just going to urge the board to try to keep up with our minutes. The changes in the open meeting law suggest that we're required to have our minutes approved in what is called a timely fashion, which the Attorney General has chosen to interpret as 2 weeks. What boards do who only meet once a month, I have no idea. But we don't want to get the Attorney General unhappy with us. So.
I do want to thank Kristen because we have definitely given her extra work. At least I know I have. All my comments make her go back about 3 times to the tapes. So thank you very much.
And it all came out great in the end. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is public hearing on the transfer of liquor license. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. I'm sorry. 5 minutes for if there are any questions or comments from anybody in the audience about something not on the agenda this evening. Didn't mean to leap over that. No? Okay, then we will move on to the public hearing, transfer of liquor license of Shack Foods of Hingham LLC, doing business as Summer Shack, 96 Derby Street, Jasper A. White, manager, to Legal Seafoods LLC, doing business as Legal Sea Bar, Roger S. Berkowitz, manager. Welcome, Mr. Devon.
Thank you. This is, for the record, a transfer of the liquor license from Summer Shack to Legal Seafoods. I have with me Mr. Berkowitz, and what I'd like to give the board is a prospective menu.
Oh, goody.
Oh, good.
I'm really excited now.
Your
Thank you
timing
very
is
much.
incorrect. This is after Christmas.
We did not bring samples.
Thank you, sir.
And then we also have some pretty pictures as to how the exterior is going to change and the interior.
Interesting, the Legal Sea Bar.
Thank you.
Correct.
Interesting.
On the floor plan, you'll see that the seating capacity is going to be the same as it was for Summer Shack, 196 seats.
Mr. Devon, could you just identify yourself for the folks at home?
Robert Devon, attorney for both Summer Shack and Legal Seafoods.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The seating capacity is identical to what it is today at Summer Shack. For those who aren't familiar with Legal Seafoods, it started back in 1950 in Cambridge as a fish market, and they opened their first restaurant in 1968. which was viewed as being an extension of the fish market. In fact, they consider themselves a fish market that happened to be in the restaurant business. I think that's your favorite line.
Yes,
right?
thank you.
Right? They have facilities throughout the eastern seaboard, okay? No real history of any problems with liquor violations. They train all of their people the way we expect them to be trained in Hingham, and I think that's basically about it. Mr. Berkowitz is here. He's willing to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you. Mr. Berkowitz, any questions?
Sure. Welcome to
Thank
Hingham.
you. Thank you very much. You know, it feels a little bit like old home week here. I've had an opportunity in the past to work with Jasper. And I see Kenny Robichaux here, who I also work with. So I'd
You are
approve
the-
anything that either of these guys are looking for.
We are the restaurant destination of the hub.
Very good. No, it's,
Getting there anyway.
it's a pleasure to be here. We've always wanted to come a little bit further south than we were in Braintree. And one of the things that we're doing these days is we're getting away from what I would call sort of a cookie-cutter approach to restaurants, in that we're trying to design, unique restaurants for the different areas that we're going into. And I think that we have an interesting design, a more contemporary design than we've ever done before. And we like doing, sort of new things. We don't want to sort of just, here's here's a typical model of what we do. We're not looking at it this way, and so we've invested the time and effort, hopefully to come up with something that is unique for Hingham and something that that the community here will embrace.
It's good. Well,
Wonderful.
your reputation precedes you, so that's a good thing. With the hours of operation you're contemplating?
It's sort of, we're open till 11 o'clock, I think, Monday through Friday. Is that what we've, planned? Okay.
Liquor license, the existing license is 1 AM license. And so on weekends, we'll open later than that for traffic.
Just the folks at home, maybe you could appreciate, come to the microphone if you wouldn't mind, just to say that again, so.
We're open till 11 PM during the week, and then on Friday, Saturday night, if the traffic bears, the existing liquor license is a 1 AM license. So to the extent that the traffic bears, doing so, we'll continue to be open, but we'll serve food until we close the establishment. We're not going to stop serving food and just serve liquor only. It's always our practice to continue to serve food until we close.
Good, thank you. Okay.
Really, I just want to thank Jasper White and Summer Shack. It was very disappointing to see them leave. However, in the same vein, it's wonderful to have legal come. Now we don't have to go over to the South Shore Plaza, which was the closest
Yes.
legal location. So congratulations to both parties and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I have been enjoying Mr. White's fish very much, so I'm glad we're going to have fish. And
Maybe I can retain Mr. White as a consultant so that I don't drop the ball.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everybody here. It's been a pleasure doing business in Hingham, and
Could you just, well, I hate to ask you this, but the people at home who are listening get unhappy when we don't ask people to come to the microphone.
And everybody really gets to see you for those that have never used your cookbooks, which are wonderful.
I just want to thank all of you folks and all the people in Hingham. It's been a pleasure doing business here, and see you around.
Good.
And also, I wish the very best to my friend Roger Berkowitz and to Legal Sea Bar. It's a
Yes.
great concept. I actually came up with the name, right?
But you didn't trademark it. Well, that's good.
You can secure a copy of the tape in case
Thank
that's
you.
an issue.
Actually, we went to the original Q bar, didn't we?
Yes.
In Vietnam, yes. So,
Wow, now we're getting back there.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Good.
Well, thank you, Mr. White and Mr. Berkowitz. Excuse me. We, as you may or may not know, that we have way, way, way more liquor licenses than we are supposed to have by population here in Hingham. And we do that by when new business, for example, when the Derby Street shops were built, we went and asked for 5 more liquor licenses, and we were already over the limit. The legislature gave them to us. We understand how important a liquor license is to the success of our your business and to all of the restaurants in town. And we do our best to support the restaurants with that. The only concern that anybody has ever had about all these liquor licenses is making sure that all of the alcohol is being served properly and legally. So we, as I'm sure Mr. Devon has caught you up on, we expect all of the servers to be tips trained. And when the staff turns over, we expect the new staff to get the training too. And we are able to continue to, we are turning ourselves into a restaurant destination. I think there's no question about it. We have so many fine restaurants in town now. Getting a reputation for that, that works to everybody's benefit. People come to town for one nice restaurant, they see another, they try them all. So what we want to be able to do is continue to support all of our liquor license holders. And the way we do that is we make sure that we don't take even one step down the road of turning Hingham into a place where you can go and get served when you shouldn't be. And that is our number one concern as the licensing board, beyond trying to support all of our businesses. And so we are very happy to have you here in town, and we hope you will chip in with all of our other restaurant owners who are making sure that our alcohol is served properly and legally, and that we don't get into trouble for having so many liquor licenses, and we will do our best to continue to support the restaurant business here in Hingham in return.
Well, thank you very much. We will certainly uphold that.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay. You are making me hungry with this restaurant.
I was
Just
going to
have to
say,
put
can
that
we
aside.
say, let's eat? Probably not yet.
No, probably not yet.
I just ask that you not show this to Mr. Robichaux, because he now will be competition, so.
Well, it's like I said, people come for one restaurant and they find another lovely restaurant in Hingham, and they'll visit them all in turn, I feel sure. Okay, are we ready to take a vote on this?
I am. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the transfer of the restaurant common victualler all alcoholic beverage license of Shack Foods of Hingham LLC, doing business as the Summer Shack, 96 Derby Street, Jasper A. White manager, to Legal Seafood LLC, doing business as the Legal Sea Bar, Roger S. Berkowitz, manager.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to Hingham.
Thank you very much.
I can't wait.
Nice to have you here. And thank you, Jasper.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Okay, moving along to the competition. We have a hearing on a petition for a change of manager for Weber Restaurant Development LLC, doing business as Scarlet Oak Tavern, from Thomas A. Totman to Kenneth S. Robichaux.
Hi,
Hi, welcome.
thank you.
So what's happening with your change of manager? Tell us.
I've been so busy, I've finally gotten around to changing it, and I'm the general manager. Tom is my boss. He is the COO of the company, and he runs a lot of our other businesses up north, and it was put to me that I need to get it transferred into my name, so that's why.
Since you're
I'm
the
here.
one you're the manager on
I'm the
site.
manager on site. I'm the general manager of the restaurant, so that's.
Okay. Any questions?
No, also a very good restaurant, which we enjoy.
Okay, any issues that we should be aware of, or is this just straight and forward?
No issues. This is just a straightforward transfer. I worked with Roger Berkowitz, and I was on his liquor license for quite some time. I've been doing this for a long time, and this is something that I'm used to doing. So I'm very aware and capable of accepting responsibility and being on that license.
You have a fine establishment, so
Thank you.
that's good. Okay, fine.
Okay, well, it's good to get the name into the person who's really there. That's always a good thing. So I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I make a motion to approve a petition for change of manager for Weber Restaurant Development LLC, doing business as Scarlet Oak Tavern, from Thomas A. Totman to Kenneth S. Robichaux.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
To you.
And next, we have a hearing to approve a petition for change of manager for South Shore Lodge, number 1850, doing business as Sons of Italy America, from Eric P. Gonvier to George F. Dolan Jr. Join us, gentlemen. You could just tell the folks at home who you are and,
My name's George F. Dolan Jr. from Hingham.
Jim Reichart, Hingham, Chairman of the South Shore Lodge 1850 Building
Mm-hmm.
Trust.
the building trust, so the trust that owns the building, in fact, I see. Okay, tell me a little bit about just about your structure at the Sons of Italy. You have a building trust, do you employ the manager who oversees events when it's rented out, or what, what's the business structure?
Bar
Just-
manager manages the bar,
Mm-hmm.
works with the rental agent and coordinates that. We're a social club, fraternal club. So, people on occasion rent our hall when we're not running our own functions. And we do have a social club liquor license. So George will be managing that, taking over from Eric Gondavere.
Okay,
I'm not sure if that's, need more detail about the operations or not, but
no,
pretty simple
I got the picture,
operation.
yeah, just want to make sure I understood it. Comments, questions?
No, good. This is where we had the Summer Street meeting and several Boy Scout Eagle ceremonies I've been to there. Very nice facility.
I assume alcohol was not being served.
Not that we know of. No, just kidding. No alcohol at the Scout things.
Good, just checking.
Thank you for that question. That was good follow-up. No, I have also frequented your establishment, and I want you to know there's a number of us who belong to it, and I've had the pleasure of being present not only at your regular events, but as Irma just mentioned, the opportunity to serve the community in another way. So we're very appreciative of that.
We do our best to represent the community. We have, scholarship funds and run, other functions that are community related.
Okay, so, Mr. Dolan, when there are events there, regardless of whether it's your Sons of Italy functions or others, are you always in attendance?
I'm always there.
And are
yes.
there other servers who
My
you
wife
employ?
is bartends with me,
Okay, and that's,
tip certified.
and so you're the only two servers?
Yep.
Okay, so you're in a slightly different position from these other, you have a little more control and knowledge of who's coming in at any given
We have a lot
time.
less
and
activity.
Yeah, and a little easier to keep track of things, I imagine. We have no record of any issues at the Sons of Italy that I can recall. Right, correct. Okay, well, those are my questions. Anything else? No? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the petition for change of manager for the South Shore Lodge number 1850, doing business as the Sons of Italy America, from Eric P. Gonvier to George F. Dolan Jr.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen?
Thank you.
Okay. We are a little bit ahead of our schedule. So rather than begin the discussion of the retirement fund, which is scheduled for 7:30, in case someone is rushing to be here for that, I'll just ask if we could have any town administrator or selectmen's reports that we might have, if any. Not much has been going on, so I'm not really expecting too much report, but anything to report?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report, okay.
Town was shut down, basically.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Somebody forgot to tell me. I kept opening it up for a variety of meetings, most of which centered around the Aquarian Water Company. And we had a number of issues, and in fact, today we had another meeting with Aquarian, and I'm happy to report that the discussion continues. And we have planned for future meetings in the coming months. So that was the major event, but what I just said in 5 minutes took about a few hours, as you all know. So just want to make the folks aware of that.
Yeah. Okay. I have nothing to report either. So I wonder if perhaps it would be possible to move the town accountant budget hearing up to this Would that be acceptable? Is
Your
that all
stuff, you
right?
ready?
I see her here, so
All
I
right.
thought maybe
Good
that
accountant, we're
would
always
be
ready.
convenient. We'll welcome Sue Nickerson, the town accountant, and we'll just have the budget hearing. We're going to have it 8:15, but we'll have it now.
So Sue, as you know, has several budgets under her direction. The town accountant's budget appears on page 6. And
Does everyone have one of these? In the back of your folders, Kristen has
The
put
new,
all the
the new
budgets.
stuff.
That's
Okay,
great, so we
yep,
don't
we got
have
it.
to, good, I can cancel my.
Okay.
Before we begin, Mr. Administrator, there's been some confusion over the amount of money is available from last year for other uses and in the budget. And I know that the stabilization fund and other components have earmarked some of that money that's there for use. So if we could, in a few minutes, just maybe give the folks at home a status report of where we're at relative to our financial objectives and whether or not those financial objectives should be changed or modified in any way.
Okay.
And you only have 30 seconds.
Well, Sue has prepared a fairly extensive memo that she's given the advisory committee, which we sent a copy to you, but I'll get another one, that details where we were with fund balance for the year. We have exceeded our thresholds as per the comprehensive annual financial report. The comprehensive annual financial report, though, doesn't take into account some of the funds that we have in fund balance that are set aside. For example, the meals tax, we transfer that out and put it into the stabilization fund, or the mooring permits, or the excess of sewer betterments over payments. And those, while they sit in fund balance and are part of that 21% of, or 20%?
20.7,
20.7% of annual expenditures is sitting in fund balance. When we pull out those other items, it drops down to roughly the 15% range. And so, and we spell them out, and then we're going to talk with the advisory about, how to structure that, or I'm sorry, audit committee, about how to structure that in the future within the CAFR itself, so that there isn't this confusion of, oh, we're at 21%, so our policy says, our policy says 18%, so we must have 3% to spend. And, it's not quite accurate.
And just refresh the folks at home, we have a range that we've been targeting between 14 and 18.
Correct.
Okay, and so when you do that adjustment, we're at 15?
Right around 15%. But, it's very important to point out that in 2008 or 9, we were at roughly 9%.
I remember.
At really the height of the economic difficulties we're having the last few years. And so, for us to slowly build that up over the past 3 or 4 years to where we are now is quite remarkable, in my opinion. In spite of the economy, we've still been able to, manage to save some money.
Okay, and the other issue I just wanted to raise, because it's the available funds, is as a result, as you just said, that we've not only managed well, but the economy has grown within the confines of Hingham. So in our budget revenue number that we're considering when we start to take a vote going forward, how much of the money that's available is included for new growth?
The most current forecast that we're using, I believe, has $850,000 that we're expecting in new tax revenues, and it's built into our budget.
So we're exceeding the 2.5% threshold that the statute permits
Correct.
by adding back in the $850,000 in growth.
Well, the statute allows for 2.5% growth in the tax levy, plus any new tax revenues that come in. As you've talked to me about this in the past, I know that this is a concern, that if you're adding new tax revenues and you're building the budget, what do you do when new tax revenues stop?
Which happened.
Which has happened in the past.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's why we have to be very careful about what those numbers are and those estimates are, and think about our long-term planning about how we're going to use that kind of revenue.
Because the new growth is a result of the building permits of a year back.
Correct.
That's right. No, I understand that. I just wanted to tee up the issue that some people under the misconception that we're living under the constraints of Prop 2.5. And we are, to the extent that we can only raise the tax levies by 2.5. But to Irma's point, it is the new growth component that we've been employing. And that was what hit us in the recession. So that, given the economic times we're in right now and the impact on other people, some people in town as the result of the recent discussions of late, expressed with a concern for what the state is going to do. I understand the governor has an announcement shortly about a transportation tax decision. We don't know how that's going to end up, and we don't know what the federal budget situation is, other than that taxes have been raised. So I think we just need to be cognizant of that before we start to spend some of the money that we work so hard to get us here. And that's, I just wanted to tee that up for discussion. Sorry, Sue, didn't mean to take
all right.
Now, well, going back to Sue's memo, I thought that was one of the best pieces of documentation I've seen in a long time, because I got it from somebody on advisory, and fund balance has always been a big mystery to most people. It's this big pot of money that's there, but you can't spend it, but it's there. So I think Sue's memo, and it's a public document, so I would urge people to get it. It explains it in very, very crystal clear way.
Well, thank you. Maybe we could put, I liked it very much as well, maybe we put that on the Board of Selectmen's page, webpage for
Yeah,
people
that's
to
not a bad
review,
idea.
because I think
It's a
that
good idea.
it's true that there's a lot of, free cash, fund balance, all of those terms that we have tried, we spent the last 5 years trying to refine them and come to grips with what we mean by them and what the state means by them, and I think we finally got it down, so let's tell people
And
how
I
it
think
works.
the concept of free cash, people really do think that's spendable, free cash.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Sue, over to you.
Yeah,
and let's-
back to the
Tell us
mundane
about
thing
your-
called the budget.
So
Or
Sue's-
budget.
Sue's budget appears on page 6, and if I could just give you a recap of it. The departmental budget request, I'm just going to read you the total, I'll read the individual numbers, I know the press likes to hear them. $344,687,000 of salary, $12,555 of expenses, the audit at $55,000. Want to remind people that this is the net audit expense. We spend over $72,000 on the audit, and other departments pay for that. $123,698 for information technology, for a total budget of $535,940. There was an additional request to increase the hours within the IT department. One individual is working, I believe, 33, and this would put her to 35 hours, a full-time. And although it's in the accounting department budget, most of the work is done within the other departments, so this is one of those requests that belongs to really everybody. The total budget request is, recommended by me, is $539,274, a $262,161 increase, or 0.4%.
Okay,
Well, the issue that I'm closest to is the audit budget, and I think as a result of the activities that we discussed a month or so ago, I think it demonstrates that the increase that money has been from years past is well spent, because they keep us not only informed, but up to date on the changing practices that under which we operate. No, I think, Sue, you run a tight ship. 0.4% is, that's a tough thing.
thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Surprised you didn't ask for more IT bodies and money.
Oh, if I could clone Steve and Kate?
I know. Well, you can do that right after I clone Roger.
Okay.
We'll use it. Seriously, I'm surprised that you're not adding more IT capacity, because I know that Fridays, Steve and Kate work at the library, and that's really not enough. I mean, they do yeoman's work. And with dispatch coming on, it would seem to me that it would be good to have somebody in your staff, in your budget, that was working to integrate all the different groups within the town hall, because I know our IT people work very hard.
Yes, they do.
So Ted, why won't you let her have more IT money?
There was a request, and I granted 100% of the request. I'm not really sure what I can do. We have 2 full-time employees. We do coordinate with the schools. They have a full-time employee that handles IT. There's probably no end to what we could do with IT, resources. But there's a question of how much availability of funding you're gonna have, because we've also talked about extra positions within the DPW, within the fire department, within the police department, and we haven't even seen the school budget yet. And we're already in a deficit mode for this year, so I think the ability to add any more, I'm really crossing my fingers to see what the governor's budget comes out with in the next few weeks, to see if we can maintain these revenue estimates, or we might have to come back and revisit some of these increases I've talked to you about, so.
So I still am going to put my oar in the water. I'd still like to see you add some IT, because I think it pays benefits, a little bit of IT, you get more efficiency, and if you can streamline a lot of the work that's done with the systems, I think it pays for itself very easily.
I would agree with you entirely, Irma. I mean, I have some cost of ownership memos that I've asked Steve to do on the MBIX system, switch over to IP, our IP phone network, which was rather controversial about 10 years ago when we did it, and it's just been a gold mine for us of value. And you're right, everything that Steve and Kate touch, but we have a request in front of Capitol for 3 items that I know they're not going to be able to fund all of them. It's just not, there's not enough money on the table for a new web page, new phone system, and there's a limit to the resources of those 2 folks and what they can administer. So I think we've seen this position grow. This was, I think, 4 years ago, just 1 person. And now we're, up to 2 full-timers. So we have seen quite a bit of growth here, more than in most of our other departments.
But I think Irma makes a good point. We probably, in the next year's planning cycle, we should do an analysis of what opportunities we may be missing. Having spent a lot of my life in the IT world, there's never enough. So the question is, how does that fit with the overall strategy? What are the opportunities that we may be missing? And I know you and I 2 years ago had a discussion about using other outside resources to supplement that group, because there are people who serve municipalities, and that's another opportunity where we can get resources that don't require adding staff and associated benefits to it. So I would just put that on your ever-growing to-do list.
Well, I think that we all know how hard our 2-member IT department works. We know that there's never enough because they never stop. They're always in motion, and the demands on their time are incredible, and I don't know how they do it. So just to keep up with what we have. So I will just add my recognition to that and understand that it's a problem that you can't ever just solve, because the opportunities grow in IT all the time in terms of what you could do. And boy, wouldn't that be great, and it's true. So we'll just have to, we'll have to keep an eye on it. We just want to especially make sure that we don't burn out the 2 people that we have by not
Precisely.
devoting enough staff resources to doing what must be done. So that, I do have a concern about that, so. Okay, any other comments or
Nope,
questions?
good job.
Okay, so let's move on to next is the reserve fund.
And the reserve fund appears on page 5 of your budget. We've level funded the reserve fund at $550,000. We didn't use the whole reserve fund last year. We have very little pressure on it so far this year, but it's still early.
Could you give us a list of the transactions from last year?
We did not, but we can get that.
Okay, because I'm used to seeing that in the AdCom book.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions about reserve fund?
No.
Okay,
Nope.
moving on to debt service.
All right, debt service appears on page 174 of your handout, of your budget book, rather. Pardon me?
And 175.
And 175, yeah. And as an overview, the debt service budget is going to decrease, from The budget request this year is $7,018,224. It represents a $104,359 decrease over last year, a 1.45% reduction. Sue can get into the details of the different issues. I'll just say that we haven't hit the first big financing for the new middle school project, which will change some of these numbers.
You'll get into the reductions as to why?
The reductions are detailed for you on the debt schedule that appears in the front of your budget book on page 20. If you
Oh,
get these glasses to read them, but you could see the schedule and you can see where the numbers are dropping off. It's just a standard, most of our debt projects drop off 5,000 to 10,000 a year as we do level principal and therefore declining interest. We're seeing decreases. A lot of them are in the excluded debt and area, and then,
What dropped off the most? Because that's a pretty good chunk of money dropping off.
The middle school modulars?
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
correct. High school and South School Elementary School dropped off almost $100,000, and other ones increased, of course. So, for example, the middle school project increased from 63,000 to 358 for 14. So, you're seeing some series of puts and takes, and they're all detailed for you on that page.
And Selectman Blotter had asked me to take the debt service and put it into categories. Couldn't do it by departments, but I did it by function.
Cool. Thank you.
And I just wanted to give it to you. It's,
Well, let's put one on TV.
I took the total of the 7 million and divided it by the general government, public safety, education, public works, and human service, and cultural and recreation.
Exactly what I wanted. Thank you. And in color.
In color, too.
very beautiful.
And I did the total amount and the percentage. Now, the two bottom ones are non-general fund for the enterprise fund and Lincoln School. Those are not part of the general fund debt service amount, so I had to put those separately. They pay
And
their own.
that is not included in the pie chart.
It is not
Yeah.
included in the pie chart.
So the enterprise fund, is that just the last of the irrigation system?
That is the, yes, the irrigation.
Not the last
Not the
of it.
last,
Not the last?
no.
Close.
That schedule.
Never mind. Don't. I thought that one was.
Goes out until forever.
I don't want to talk about it.
2019.
Oh, wow. All right. That's not too bad.
What you're talking about is the lease
Okay.
and the last year.
Well, this is
Thank
the
you.
famous part of the debt that is what it is. The town meeting has to vote for us to go into debt, and there we are, and it is what it is, so it's not much to change.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Maybe
okay.
we can include this with the minutes. I think this would be really,
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
they are part of the minutes now, because
Because we got them.
here they are. Can you get them electronically is the best way. Okay, moving on then to contributory group insurance.
It appears on page 177 of your budget book. The current budget request is $6,909,400. Represents a $455,400 increase, or roughly a 7% increase. Now,
We're referring to health insurance here, we should.
correct, yes.
we should
We're referring
make
to the
that clear.
town's group health insurance, which covers 50% of the cost of health insurance for all active employees and retired employees of the town. And although it says 7%, and I know you know that we forecast at 10% increments, we still maintained our 10% forecast. We were just able to adjust it during the year, as we do regularly, to actuals from the previous year. So we were representing a 10% increase over the previous year. I can tell you that the Plymouth Mayflower Healthcare Group is looking at rates that probably will be underneath the amount that we have here. We will know more in about a month, as we're looking at the data that comes in on the claims.
Okay,
We'll give you a revised number as soon as they give us rates.
Do we know how we're doing this year relative to performance? Do you have any indication?
So did you do a budget to actual? I think we talked about that a little.
I haven't finished it, no.
I mean, I know we looked at it through the first 3 months, and it was roughly, we were spot on. So, we have to wait until we get through the October-November period to see what happens with the school department as they bring their staff on board for the school year, just to make sure. But when we last looked at it, we looked like
We
we were
were
on
on
target.
target.
Okay.
Just a curiosity about our other post-employment benefits. We had, I think, been on a schedule of sort of redoing the actuarial report every 2 years. Are we going to continue on that schedule?
What a great segue to the next budget, which is OPEB, although it's not on that list, but it's the next.
Well, it's
one.
listed
It's
under
like-
group
yeah.
insurance. We put it
Right.
under group
Okay.
insurance, so that's where it is.
The number you have in your book ties directly to the new actuarial schedule that we received from the new actuary, KMS Actuaries, and we got a very good answer, and I'd like to bring the actuary in at a later point in time, like we're bringing the retirement consultant in to talk about the retirement board and the fund. The actuary will walk us through, how it changed from year to year. If you recall, last year I was somewhat uncomfortable with the inability to have a good dialogue about why was it changing from year to year. And the committee decided, the audit committee decided to, not recommend making changes to that. We didn't, and we left the numbers alone. They've come out, if you recall, the actuary raised that number substantially. I think we came in with original numbers of 1.3 or 4 last year, which we felt were just inaccurate. We're seeing them more reflective of what we think the true costs are.
So we just had it done.
Just had it done.
So in another couple of years, we'll take another look.
No look
probably.
at it. But
Okay.
I'm going to bring the actuary in when you get
That would be
it.
very helpful, because it's like a black box. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how far the actuary can go explaining to civilians how this works, but I would like to make an attempt.
I think you'll find Linda Bourneville, who's the principal of KMS Actuaries, does a great job of bringing it down to, from accountants to, and actuaries down to everyday people. One of the reasons we hired her, I think.
Okay.
Do I dare ask, did you break this one out, or, I know this one's a little harder.
Actually, this one is extremely hard to break out by category. We have it broken out in the report by public safety, school, and all other towns. And the reason we do it along those lines is because those post-retirement healthcare benefits are tied to retirement, because they're post-retirement. And so they tie to the retirement benefits that people get, and those groups retire at different ages and different years of service. So we can schedule it along that, but for us to determine, how much the accountant's office uses versus the
And-
selectman's office,
no.
the numbers
That would
wouldn't
not
be
pro-
worth the value.
Well, that's not
of-
productive.
Exactly.
Did you, on the group insurance, the plain old group insurance, could you break that one out too?
I think we already have done that, didn't you?
Did you really?
I think
Yay.
we forwarded that out a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's the eye chart, okay. So we don't get a color one of those.
There's too many departments.
Oh, okay,
The
because
pie
I was
chart would
looking,
be.
if you could do something like that, that would be aces. That is, because that tells the story and it's easy for people to understand. This was yeoman's work.
I don't think I could get that into a pie chart.
Okay.
There's too many departments.
No, I mean consolidating the departments,
Oh,
just like,
into
just like you
the-
did, yes.
Oh, okay.
Categories of government?
That
You
would be
got it.
perfect, sir.
Sure.
Why don't you bring that back in sometime? Not. Thank you. This is great.
Quickly go do it. No.
Okay. Anything else on health insurance? And we already did OPEB, which is at the end of the list,
Everybody
so,
got one?
yeah,
I've got 2 minutes.
I think,
I just wanted one to go down to Betty or.
And how about
For the
Kristen?
record.
okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the next
Thank
budget
you.
would be the workers' comp budget on page 179. Pardon me? I don't have retirement, oh yeah, I'm sorry. It was in the, it's at the bottom of the list.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, we're getting
The one
there.
you're listing.
All right, so
Getting there.
workers' comp appears on page 179 of your budget book. We've level funded it at 0%, $300,000 from last year, and Sue can update you on the fund balance of the workers' comp trust fund.
The fund balance of the Workers' Comp Trust is on page 180. We ended the year with a fund balance of $189,107. Workers' comp, we did do an RFP. We have a new third-party administrator for workers' comp, and they are doing an excellent job. They're getting people back quicker. They have a full-time nurse at the first stage of an injury, so they go much quicker, and they get the employees back to work a lot quicker. And they have found a lot of savings for the town. So we're doing much better.
Who is the new provider?
It was from TD Bank. Future Comp is the workers' comp.
So if you could, the trust fund talks about the amount of revenue that we bring, oh, not the revenue, the expenses that we have coming out. So would you talk to the board, how much did we spend last year?
Last year, we spent $246,000.
You can see our appropriation is over that amount.
Right.
And a lot of our claims are legacy claims that have been with us for, actually some of them several decades. It's nothing we can do once we get to that point. The court's ordered a specific benefit, it stays with that individual, mostly for life. We monitor it, we try to get them back if we can, but usually they're permanent disabilities. And then we have the interim stuff that happens throughout the year. If you recall, it was about, I think 3 or 4 years ago that this fund was in deficit. And the decision was made at the time not to build the deficit up instantly by laying people off, and because we didn't have the revenue, but to keep it at the 300 level, even though it was slightly above what our annual costs were, and build that budget up. Now we're getting to a point where we have 180,000 of fund balance in that area, and we're running at 300,000 or 240,000 a year, but we have a budget of 300. So we're getting to the point where we can have a discussion about whether 300 is the number we want going forward.
And any recent decisions that would suggest to us a concern about the courts changing their attitude on this issue?
Nothing yet. This is more of us just making sure that we manage our safety programs and we manage our workforce so that they don't get injured and you don't experience that cost. As you know, we're self-insured, so if someone gets injured, it's dollar for dollar for us. And it's not cost effective, by the way. The town decided 20 years ago to move out of the premium based for this process, and I believe Harry Way was on the committee in the early 90s to make this decision. I think I see a former selectman back there sitting at the time, and it was astounding. We spent some $400,000 a year at the time, and we cut our costs to something like $200 in 1 year. Before I got here, I had no part in it, but I just to give you the history of where this has been. Self-insured program has been very successful for the town for the last 2 decades.
Okay, so if no other comments on workers' comp, we'll move on
Good
to
job.
unemployment compensation.
Oh, I wish we had good news on this one. Page 181, unemployment compensation is, we're maintaining at 50,000. Last year, we spent 84,000, and Sue can give you some commentary and reports about where we are this year.
Right now, on unemployment, we only have 4 people collecting unemployment. I just found out that we lost an appeal, and we will be adding 1 person more to that. There are loopholes in the unemployment, legislation's trying to close them, but they need to do some more work.
We are a direct pay. We don't pay a percentage of our salary, 'cause obviously that would be, that minimum percentage is usually 2.4%, so that'd be $1 million a year. And this is a very hard thing for us to budget because we're not laying people off or reducing our labor force, so we ought not have any. We can look at past experience, but that really is no measure of what we're gonna do in the future. A lot of this occurs with some turnover. The school department does, get to a 3-year mark with certain, with their teachers before they get the tenureship, and they have to make a decision. And if they decide not to keep a teacher, then of course that comes in there. Occasionally, we have transitions on our side. But the cases that Sue mentioned, I have to give David Basler credit. He's been doing yeoman's work with the state on this, and we have a letter that I will share with you next couple of days that we're sending on a case that we just lost that we're very disappointed about the outcome. And it speaks to the greater issue of how the state is administering unemployment benefits for municipalities, because we're a direct pay. Sometimes the process doesn't work out very well for us.
Any other questions? Okay, moving along to Medicare, another one of those numbers that is what it is.
So Medicare, here's on page 182. The budget is in at $714,420. It's a $21,099 increase over prior year, and a 3.4% increase. Ultimately, this number will equal 1.45% of your total salary budget for the town. The Tax Reform Act of 1986 mandated that as of January 1st, 1986, any employee hired by the town was subject to Medicare, was eligible for Medicare, and therefore subject to, and therefore the employer had to pay the employer's share of 1.45%. So as we slowly and inexorably get to the point where we have no employees that we hired prior to 1986, this number will match that payroll number. So as Laura said, it is what it is, and it's moving steadily up.
Okay, so that brings us to contributory retirement, and I understand we're having a report from the board.
What I'll do is just go over the budget with you quickly, and then we're gonna turn it over to the retirement board. We have no, I'm sorry, the retirement, it appears in your book on page 178. There is no longer any non-contributory pensions. Last year, the current fiscal year, eliminated that. Non-contributory pensions were pensions provided to employees in Massachusetts prior to when government employees had to contribute for their pension. For example, in California, many employees don't contribute, state employees don't contribute to their pension benefits. They just get it when they meet their service levels. That used to be the system in Massachusetts. It hasn't been that way for, I gotta say, close to 50 years now. And we had one person that passed away 2 years ago, and we don't have that payment. The pension cost for our contributory employees is $3.8 million, $164,000 increase, and about a 4.5% increase. And this number will increase approximately 4.5% from year to year.
Straightforward? Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You want me to introduce the board?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So we have the whole retirement board with us here. We have our treasurer, G. Montgomery, Eileen McCracken, who is our town clerk, but is also another one of our elected members. Both Jean and Eileen represent our elected members. Harry Way is the retirement board's appointment to the retirement board. The retirement board appoints one member. Sue Nickerson sits in as town accountant, and I serve as the chairman of the retirement board as the appointment from the Board of Selectmen. And we have with us Chris Rollins from FIA, our consultant. And if you remember last year, I talked to you a lot about the value we created on the retirement board by changing our investment model. And really, Chris is the author of that.
Could you please just explain for the folks at home who elects the elected members of the retirement?
Sure. The retirement board consists of 5 members. 2 are elected by the members of the retirement system, so any of the active or retired employees. The selectmen have an appointment. The town accountant, by statute, is automatically on the board, and then the board itself picks their 5th member. And the board has chosen Harry to be the 5th member. And I have to say, Harry has been very instrumental in helping us with our investment policy.
Would you like to join us, Harry? Could you just come
You
up
have
to the
to come to the
microphone?
mic, though,
Yeah.
Mr. Way?
Yes,
You
Yes.
do,
you
because they can't hear you over the phone. I know at home you would love
People
people
are
to hear you.
watching at home.
Harry, I hear you anywhere.
They're down at Tosca's East right now. I just want you to know, I've been on this board for over 6 years. It's the most cohesive board I've ever served on, and we have some very strong talent. And however, we don't report to you guys. We have no responsibility of being before you tonight.
Is that why everybody's smiling?
Hold on.
Really?
We have, to the best of our history, never reported to the Board of Selectmen.
I know, I was very excited about this.
Well,
thought,
I think the
this
reason
has never happened
for it-
before.
The reason for it is because we feel that we need more visibility, and we have to be more sensitive to the people we represent, and that's the employees of the town. Now, we went through an exhaustive search for a consultant, and we met with people who worked for brokerage firms who said they were fee only, and we didn't believe it. And we talked to other people who we just could not understand. And we came up with a very interesting firm out of Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, FIA, Financial Investors Advisors. Is that right? Yeah. Oh, thank you. And Chris, who's an ex-hockey player, which I have a great deal of affinity to, has ended up being our consultant. And what we've done over the last 2 years is to really charge him with keeping us honest as to asset allocation and how we're investing the $80 million that we have for the employees of this town. We are not fully funded, nor do we have to be. We're required by law to be fully funded by 2040. We will achieve that quicker, we think. But right now, who knows with the economy. So I think really it'd be very interesting to hear Chris, just for a few minutes, enlighten you as to what we get from him and why he's so important, not only to us as a committee, but to the town. So.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. The report that you have provided is exhaustive.
Rather interesting, isn't it?
I would say exhausting, but I know you're going to hit the high points for us so that the folks at home will. Yes, I have it all electronically, so you're welcome to it.
Do we have extras, or just let Carol?
Fine.
Okay.
I have mine at home electronically,
do I.
so I'm all set, so we're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the accolades. My name's Chris Rollins. I'm a consultant with Fiduciary Investment Advisors, and as Harry said, we're domiciled in Windsor, Connecticut. We advise to about $23 billion in institutional client assets. We have about 35 people at the firm. 100% of our revenue is derived from billables to our clients. So we do not accept any commissions. We do not sell any type of products. About $23 billion under advisement. We have corporate clients such as Samsung and Mercedes-Benz in the higher education space, Boston College, Holy Cross, Williams College. And in the municipal setting, we probably have the largest exposure in New England. We consult to such towns as Watertown, Plymouth, Swampscott, Natick here in Massachusetts, and Connecticut, probably about 24. So towns like Greenwich, Wilton, Stamford, and Westport. It was an exhaustive due diligence process. The committee did come up to FIA in Windsor to kick the tires, met with the team, our due diligence group, and visited the office. And we're absolutely thrilled to be retained by Hingham and have been a consultant now for, I think, going on 3 years. So our initial project that we did was really kind of take a look at the overall asset allocation. This plan is with PRIT, the Pension Reserve Investment Trust, and PRIM with Massachusetts. Historically, it was classified as a participating plan, whereas the plan would transfer the title and the assets to PRIT. And the asset allocation at that time was roughly about 85% equity and alternative investments and 15% fixed income. And we had just come out of a difficult 2008, not too long ago, where there's some tail risk event. I think at that time the fund may have been down 28% or so.
Could you tell the folks at home what PRIT and PRIM are?
Yeah, sure. PRIM is the Pension Reserve Investment Management Group overseeing Pension Reserve Investment Trust within Massachusetts, roughly about a $55 billion investment trust. And that portfolio is invested in a variety of investment strategies, both domestic equities, international equities,
And
alternative
are the members
investments.
largely municipalities and state agencies, or?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's the state employees, it's the state teachers that merged together in the mid-90s. And then also in the early 90s, they opened it up to allow municipalities. Hingham was one of the first to join. And we essentially transferred our assets to the PRIM board to manage, create an investment allocation policy, et cetera. And what Chris is describing to you is a process where we decided to create our own investment policy, our own asset allocation policy, and began moving the assets around differently within the PRIM structure.
Great.
So at that time, the portfolio, the overall strategy, I would say, was 85%, 15% equity, alternatives to fixed income, and roughly the overall expense ratio for that strategy was hovering around 52 basis points. As a result of some of the work that FIA did, a number of studies, and we delivered a separate diagnostic review, and working closely with the committee and understanding their risk and some of the actuarial assumptions built into the actuarial report, we tempered back that risk, still within PRIT, but we have now sleeves of investment where roughly we have a 60% or 50% fixed income allocation and 50% to equities and alternatives as well. The overall expense of that portfolio has now been driven down to roughly 20 basis points or so, so we did cut the fees in half.
Are we the first member to design our own investment strategy within PRIT?
No, there are plans that can go from a purchasing where, a participating where you, as Ted said, you transfer the title and assets all to PRIT and you have very little control over that allocation because it's very holistic for every other town that is within that participating arrangement. But under a purchasing arrangement, you can maintain allocations at PRIT, but you can design your own asset allocation. Mm-hmm. There's two sleeves that you can't participate in under the purchasing arrangement, but for a majority, you can still enjoy administrative efficiencies and certainly cost efficiencies, economies of scale, because you're still within a $50 billion portfolio.
So in short, what we're talking, I'm just trying to make sure I understand that we have hired your firm to stand in the place of the PRIT board, making our, helping us make our own asset allocation decisions. Is that the idea?
Let me see if I can just expand a little bit. First of all, the PRIT system has, as Chris said, some communities that invest all their money with them and some communities that only invest a portion. Larger systems might decide to just buy the real estate portion or buy a fixed income portion or the equity portion.
And they might dispose of other assets elsewhere?
And you invest their other assets independently.
I see.
And PRIM has grown substantially. I think they have some 90 municipalities that participate in their system. When we were in the early 90s, I believe there's only 15 or so. And most of that growth has been with communities buying pieces, not investing all their assets. PERAC requires, the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission requires systems to have an investment policy and an asset allocation plan and a consultant if we do not invest wholly within PRIM. So the retirement board took a cost on that it didn't need to take on and an expense it didn't need to take on in hiring Chris's firm because we wanted to change the asset allocation. And we wanted to change the asset allocation because we felt that the state pension system was more aggressive in terms of what you're trying to earn. So the swings when markets were down were greater. And we wanted to become a little bit more conservative and a little more narrow. I looked at it this way. I've been sitting on this board with Eileen almost 20 years, and we've almost gotten to the brass ring twice, full funding.
Full funding.
And each time, 30% market corrections. And you go back and you look at how that transpired and think about if you had a slightly more conservative approach, you might avoid that. That's what we targeted them with.
Might we have gotten to the brass ring if we'd had a more conservative approach? Or
well, last year said we would have.
And that's the input that we took from our discussions and designed this strategy accordingly.
So our performance has exceeded the performance of the state.
It has since we've
Since we
hired
made that change.
FIA and decided to make that shift. I will just say, some years where we will lag the pension for the state system, and some years we'll be ahead of them. I think generally we'll be behind them when the markets are roaring, and we'll be a little bit ahead of them when the markets are contracting.
I remember Harry being very excited about this, because at the time when we were under the old way, it really was up and down with no control.
Yeah.
And then when they moved to your company and the new way of doing it was very exciting.
Yeah, and I think, and then that was a key point, is, our objective here is in down markets is to preserve as much principal as we can and avoid those tail risk events. And as we've all experienced over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of headwinds to the market and a lot of macroeconomic issues, so the markets have been pretty volatile. It's when you get a very frothy market where this fund will lag behind PRIT only because it has a much conservative posture, but that conservative posture is consistent with your risk tolerance and your funding status. So those towns and municipalities with a much less funded status, that hovering around 50 or 40% or 60%, need to take on additional risk to close the gap or make bigger contributions. when you have a much more enviable funding position, you don't need to take on as much risk to close that gap. And I think that was kind of the objectives that we looked at.
And I just want to point out, though, as we talk about the performance being different than the state pension system, I don't want that to come across as a criticism of how the state pension system is being run, because I serve as a member of a board on that, on the Prim board, and it's run fabulously well. But it's trying to be a pension system for 105 pension systems at the same time, and everybody has different needs. So just like an investor at 25 years old is not the same as an investor at 55 years old, a pension system that's at full funding or close to it has a different risk tolerance, or ought to, than one that is woefully underfunded. And that was more of a recognition of that is why we pursued that activity, not our concern with our managers, because we've left all our money with their.
That's correct. We did leave all, excuse me, we did leave all the money there, and I think that reflects the attractiveness of their program that they have. It allows the town, such as Hingham, at an $80 million portfolio, to get a broad access to a variety of capital markets and asset classes, and again, at 20 or 21, 22 basis points. If the town were to go outside, you may not have access to those investment strategies, and if you do, you could see an aggregate expense ratio somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 85 to 120 basis points. So, so it's some of the attractiveness of that organization. And from a qualitative perspective, FIA, we meet with the organization as well. So we meet with Prim to understand the individuals at the organization, how they're managing the money and their process up there from a quantitative perspective through our due diligence reporting. Then we report on the investment results, keeping the board fully informed on any progress and the performance of the portfolio on a monthly snapshot as well as quarterly. The quarterly one is a much more detailed analysis, but we do provide a monthly update as well.
So the board is presented with something along this lines every 3 months. Chris comes up from Connecticut, and we spend several hours walking us through this. You have about 10 or 15 minutes here to walk the selectmen through this.
Well, let me
so-
just, and I do have a
Highlight
couple
some-
slides, if I may. So the first
Yeah.
tab that we like to do is when we're sitting together collectively is talk about through the quarter the capital markets and the economy and what was driving some of the investment performance. So we do know that there's times where the market performs well and times where it doesn't. So it's setting the expectations at a committee level of how the portfolio performed in that particular environment. So we're talking about the economy both domestically and globally. We're talking about the capital markets on a global basis and how the portfolio reacted to those events during the quarter. And then we get more specific into the portfolio itself, and that really kind of starts on, well, I guess it would be page 20.
Put my copy up here for the public to see.
And what you have here is we start doing a deeper dive into the town's portfolio from an asset allocation perspective, and you can see of a $80 million portfolio, basically what the allocation is, what our long-term allocation is, and is there any difference to that target. And so any differences would be reflected in maybe some adjustments that would take place. But again, you can see here on this page from an asset allocation perspective how the portfolio is allocated across fixed income, global equity markets, hedge fund, real estate, all within PRIT. And you see the value as of September 30th, we're about $80.7 million. On the next page, what we do...
Just if I could comment.
Sure.
The investment strategy reflects what's going on, it would appear, in global markets, because we seem to be doing well relatively to the domestic performance components, but the international and global equity components haven't performed as well. Is that a fair?
It's a fair assessment. So we do know some of the challenges that in Europe with the sovereign debt risk, and then I guess on a more macro issues on the global markets have been a challenge. And so domestic equity markets have performed better than the international markets, although they still represent pockets of opportunity in emerging markets as well. So there's a very diversified portfolio.
And I would assume the board changes the targets accordingly based on the information that you share with them.
The targets are pretty static. So it's not a tactical allocation where FIA says, well, we don't like the international markets, it's time to get out. So the ranges are fairly, the portfolio is fairly static, but there is flexibility around the range, typically around 5% or so. So when the portfolio does get above that range, it gets rebalanced to some of the midpoints here within each of these asset classes.
What are you calling emerging markets now?
Well, emerging markets would be MSCI Emerging Market Index would be such as India and China.
That's what I was
Those are the
curious,
emerging
which
markets.
countries are now being targeted, because that seems to move around.
Yeah, it does, and so it would be such targets as outside really core developed nations in Europe. So Brazil, China, India would be some of the emerging markets, and that's where I think most money managers anticipate a lot of growth coming, because we do have fiscal austerity measures in some of the developed markets, and then obviously here in the U.S. at some point. On the next page, 21, we just do a comparison between the Hingham portfolio and that of the PRIT core, and you can see really the difference there within the fixed income allocation. So the town of Hingham has roughly a 42% allocation to fixed income, where PRIT only has about 14% to fixed income. And that's really the notable difference in the strategy. Right.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of the main difference. And if you do some of the optimization modeling that we do, you can see some of the expected return on a historical basis, suggests a more tempered risk profile for the portfolio in of itself. On 22 is actually the investment performance for the portfolio. We provide an account reconciliation, which is the upper left-hand box, and you can see some of the cash flow for the quarter and year to date. We've created a benchmark, so we want to benchmark the investment performance. How did the performance do against a market benchmark? And this reflects the asset allocation of the trust. And then down below is the investment performance result, net of fees. So for the quarter and year-to-date, you can see the portfolio on a year-to-date basis through September 30th, so it'd be January through September 30th, was 9.5% net. The benchmark was 8.8, which is about 70 basis point of excess return. And on a one-year basis, you can see 14.4 for about 100 basis points of outperformance. So we're still with PRIT. We still think PRIT's doing a very good job managing those sleeves of money, and then we compare that performance against a market benchmark. So even as we tempered the risk, still with PRIT, we've got outsized return. And so we benchmark this both on a quarterly basis and monthly basis as well. I'm just trying to look at. I put the portfolio into place. 2010 and 2011, we had the calendar year summary. So you can see in 2010, which is almost a full year, 13.2. Then 2011, which was a pretty volatile year, we were up about 1.1%. The benchmark was flat. But what we've been noticing on our monthly reports, when the markets are down, let's assume that the benchmark itself is down 2%. We're seeing the portfolio down only 1% or 1.2%. So we're really liking the performance in the down market. And then when the markets are going up, we're getting a little bit of outperformance as well. So those are the two combinations that we strive to achieve in this portfolio, is sort of that steady performance, is preserve as much principal as we can in those down markets.
What's going to be your toughest challenge going forward?
We think for municipal plans, is going to be the fixed income market. Absolutely.
Just not delivering?
Well, mathematically, and where interest rates are, you just cannot generate outsized returns anymore. And at some point, interest rates will rise. Yeah, you're collecting coupons in this environment. It's really negative real rate of return. So I think what you're looking at, more managers looking at opportunistically fixed income strategies, so outside of the treasury market, which I think everybody feels is very rich right now. Looking at corporate securities, mortgage-backed bonds, as other options within fixed income. But we do think that's going to present a challenge, because you have a built-in investment return assumption in the actuarial report, and historically, you look at the fixed income segment is expected to deliver 4.5% or 5% return, and we think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of municipal plans, going forward. We think interest rates will remain steady, at least through 2015, through that kind of a tight spread. But, beyond that, at some point, rates will rise, and that'll produce negative returns for fixed income.
So that could impact your global portion of this.
It could,
Yeah,
absolutely. It may be more of a global feel to it in fixed
Brazil
income.
and those other countries, that becomes a place where it
Absolutely.
becomes more attractive.
Yeah, we do think the U.S. fixed income market will be challenged over the next few years. And right now, we think interest rates will be in a fairly tight trading range for the next few years. But at some point, we will be addressing that for our clients.
Aki hasn't called you to say? No.
No, not yet, not yet. And I know I want to be cognizant of time. On 24, we get a little bit more narrative to help understand what's driving some of the performance. So on the previous page, we looked at just the raw data of numbers. And here's the due diligence from our manager research group at FIA, which helps explain what's driving some of the performance from a performance attribution perspective. So when we looked at the quarterly investment results, where were some of that results being achieved? And what segment of the portfolio? Was it domestic equity, fixed income, international markets, real estate, et cetera? Down below, from a due diligence perspective, you see a box, kind of a quadrant here, a variety of manager status summary. You'll see each investment mandate, you'll see the manager and the fund, then you'll see a status, and that maintained status is FIA, our firm's opinion on each investment.
Recommendation.
Exactly. You'll see one of them is on watch within PRIT, and the reason it's on watch is because they've made changes within that organization. And so instead of doing more of a fund-to-fund approach within the hedge fund structure, the new director does have a hedge fund background. He's looking to bring that in more of a direct hedge fund investment strategy, cut out some of the layers of consulting in that process and save fees. And we've been monitoring that closely. But anytime there's a change of that magnitude, it's further due diligence on our part. We put it on watch, which means we're keeping you informed, we're cognizant of what's going on, and keeping you updated. And then we break out on 25 and 26, each segment, each sleeve of the investment portfolio and the results of those investment strategies as well, for each investment mandate at the total level, and then each investment strategy accordingly. And I think I could, if I can wrap it up with two more slides. 27, 28 is our manager due diligence commentary for each investment strategy. So again, for each of the sleeve that we have money allocated to, here's a commentary of how that sleeve performed and our observations or our comments or our thoughts on that process. And then I think for full fee transparency on 34, we are cognizant of the municipal setting. As you can see, what we've done here is to outline the fee schedule for each of the sleeves.
Wow,
beginning
that's
from
quite a
left to
drop
right.
in the fees.
Excuse me?
Quite a drop.
There is, yeah. And that's, I think, the attractiveness of PRIT is, at a $50 billion portfolio, 50 plus, is to get access to these strategies. And at the aggregate, you can see 21 basis points, whereas historically we're at roughly about 52 or so.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Cut it
Yeah.
more than half. That's amazing. Wonderful. Well, thank you for this. I feel like I can go home now and actually look at this and get something out of it now that I've had the little tour. Thank you very much.
Do I assume when you
appreciate it.
come back, there'll be a quiz?
Big quiz, yeah. There you go.
We do need some time to read this, because this came to us late.
Well,
And I'm going, there's no way
Yeah.
I'm reading this
I
thing.
thought I would wait for the guided tour and then I could really dive in.
Okay, listen, I'm conducting classes tomorrow. I got
There
the
you go.
textbooks out, so I dust this cobweb off.
I'm calling him, skip the textbooks.
So I'd like to congratulate the retirement board on your accomplishment. This is a big change, and I'm so glad you came to tell the town about it. You do have to speak into the microphones to get your visibility because well, you wanted visibility. I guess they could see you, but they wouldn't be able to hear you without it. So I really appreciate
I want you to know, Harry, they're looking at you right now, so.
Thank you for coming up from
Thank you.
Connecticut.
This is amazing. This is very good. Lots of information in
And I
here.
think also the people, the citizens like to know how we take care of business here in Hingham. And this is a great example of taking a situation that was pretty good and making it a whole lot better. So congratulations to the board. This is a great accomplishment.
And based on the number of financial services people that do live in Hingham at the very highest levels.
They're
should
watching.
Give them.
They are? You've probably heard
I
them.
hope they're watching. This
Well, they
would
will be
very
now that they know
reassuring.
this is going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
No,
Well, yes.
I didn't understand a word of what you said, so could you put it in layman's terms, or can someone do a press release? 'Cause I'm just
Harry,
concerned
can you,
sure.
I would, you know what I'd recommend?
Could Harry do it?
Harry or Ted could
Yeah.
could give you a summary.
Yes.
Maybe after the meeting or email or something like that. Thank you very
Great,
much.
thank you.
Thank you to the
Thank
board. I
you
really
all.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great idea. Come back again soon.
Thank you.
That's great. A board meeting where you laugh it's a meeting you want to go to if you laugh a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you.
See that on a regular basis.
Okay. So that brings us to, we want to welcome the members of the Government Study Committee who have come. I'm sorry that we are slightly behind schedule here, but come on up and join us
Where's everybody else?
and tell us about your,
Probably here, they just haven't arrived, they haven't been in yet.
oh, maybe,
I think they might be outside.
okay.
Ah,
The Government Study Committee has come in because they have 3 articles that they are planning to recommend to town meeting. And they're beginning their, come on up, beginning their process. No, we want, whatever your order is, that is what we will,
We are rather disorderly tonight, aren't we?
so are we, so it. So, you guys, we'll ask the chair. Chair of the
Judy.
Government Study Committee, Judy
Judy,
Cole.
come on
which-
up.
Which article shall we address first?
Which article shall we address first? Do you want, Judy, would you like George? Go for it. I'm sorry. You can hear longer. I was sitting here.
Okay.
Let me, first of all, give you.
Could you maybe introduce the members of your committee for everybody?
Well, Judy is our chairman, so Judy is our leader. She's leaving tomorrow for a bit of a vacation. I am here because I'm representing the electronic voting issue that you've heard me talk about before. And we have Linda Port, who is our newest member, and she'll be speaking to you. And we have Phil Edmondson, who will also be speaking to you, and Scott Ford in the back, and Eva Marks.
Way in the back.
Way back there. So we've all been working on various issues, and we will be talking to you about them. Anyway, I did print out some notes, and these are only notes for the selectmen and for Ted, having to do with the material that I'm going to talk about, okay?
2 sets?
It's all right, they're all held together. The Government Study Committee has been, also I have copies for you folks if you want to follow along with my notes. Linda, if you want to get those.
do we have one?
3.
Do you have one for everybody?
3, 1 for each
We
of the
missing
selectmen,
one?
that's fine.
Are we missing one?
Okay,
Yeah.
now,
That's- I haven't, no, I have enough. I have enough. Okay, the Government Study Committee, as you know, was formed by the annual town meeting in 2010 on Article 23, and we were charged with the responsibility for making recommendations to make town government more efficient and more effective. And so we looked at many things. One of the first things we did was to conduct a survey, a poll in the town. And one of the things that emerged from that survey was the fact that we thought that a town meeting could be a little bit more user-friendly. So we set about thinking of ways to do that. And one of the things that we have come up with was the idea of electronic voting at town meeting. You've heard me talk about this before. But the reasons that we decided to pursue it was, first of all, that it would offer privacy of the vote. accuracy of the vote, and also respect for everybody's time, the volunteers and all the people who work on town meeting. We think town meeting is very important. It's really very important. It's the legislative branch of our town. It's part of the whole system of checks and balances that makes for good governments in the town. It's not just a quaint custom that's held over, residual from colonial days. It's really serious business because we conduct the town business. We authorize over $86 million of expenditures. So it's quite serious, and we think we should do everything possible to make it as user-friendly and effective as possible. Our poll indicated that there was a need to do that. The impediments that we saw to the efficiency and effectiveness of town meeting, and therefore town government, was the reticence of many voters to publicly vote against an issue that might be favored by either their clients, their neighbors, their friends, sometimes their bosses. The accuracy of the vote is even sometimes questioned by those of us, myself included, who has a soft voice, and very often people like me feel that sometimes our voices are a little bit drowned out by the loud shouts of some people when they vote in a voice vote. Sometimes even people perceive there's a little bit of manipulation because there are those who show up to vote only for the particular issue that they care about, and then they don't stay for the rest of town meeting. So that's kind of an uncomfortable thing. And of course there were other issues, remote parking, long waits for quorum, uncomfortable seats and so forth. But we decided that we would think about the things that we could possibly have an effect on. So we thought the privacy of the vote, the accuracy of the vote, and the respect for voters' time were issues that we could address. And we thought that town meeting electronic voting would be something to bring before the selectmen and before the advisory and before the town. Now, we're bringing to you what we have learned, and we recognize that the idea isn't ready to jump far right at this moment. First of all, the town moderator is the person who decides what's going to happen at town meeting. Everybody participates in various ways, but it really is his show to run, in a sense. So we have brought him, we brought the town clerk, we brought the IT department. We've done everything possible to include all of these people who are involved in town meeting, but recognizing always also that the town moderator is the person who would make an ultimate decision on this. So electronic voting at town meeting would guarantee the privacy and security of the vote, which is very important on controversial issues. The accuracy of the vote is important. For example, the science of acoustics proves that in a place where we hold our meetings, the human ear simply cannot distinguish accurately every single vote. Even some of us who have soft voices, we sort of know that. But our moderators are very good because they really can tell on a voice vote pretty well what's going on, and they always have the ability to ask for a standing vote, or the people in the audience can ask for a ballot or a standing vote if there's any doubt. So we've been handling this okay. We don't disagree that the moderator, past and present, have done a fine job of it, but we do think the 21st century technology could make unnecessary the 25 people who have to stand up and say, please, may we have a standing vote. So we think that this is worthy of consideration for that reason. And then last but not least on my list here is the fact that nobody's time is free. All of us know, those of us who are volunteers, those of us who work, nobody's time is free. And we should, it's a good idea to respect the time, the value of the time that everybody puts in for the benefit of the town. So we think that saving time by eliminating the necessity for standing votes and for ballot votes is a good thing. Now, there are nuts and bolts. We went into the nuts and bolts of how this would work, and I have a description here. and even a little sample of the module that was used. We had a webinar that we conducted at the Hingham Public Library, and some of you were there for it, showing how it would happen. And then we had a live demonstration last summer to which the town moderator and the past town moderator came, the town clerk, the IT department, everyone, a great many people came to that. And so we know that it's doable. Every voter is provided with a handheld device. It's like your cell phone. And the device has a number or a code or identifier. It's given to the person as they enter a town meeting, and it's associated with each unit. People will press either 1, 2, or 3, which would be affirmative, negative, or abstain. And the votes are sent by a wireless system to a central computer, which then tabulates the results and produces them very quickly. Within a couple of minutes, you would have the count, which would be then given to the town moderator, who would perhaps project it on a screen behind him. Those are details that would have to be worked out, and that's what the proposed committee would decide on. So we think this is worth further consideration. As I say, we've worked with the moderators. We have, the moderators have shared their opinions with us. Tom O'Donnell made a very nice summary and an analysis of the various votes, how much time it had taken for standing votes, and how many had taken place during his tenure. So Mr. Puzo has been wonderful. He even attended a meeting in Wayland, which is the only town, the first town, the only town so far, with an open town meeting that has adopted this technology. So we have not been discouraged by them, although they have been very, upfront about where they think it would be useful. They probably wouldn't do it for every single vote because it's very quick to do a voice vote, as you can see. But the electronic vote would be extremely useful for a long vote, for a controversial vote. Other communities that are using this technology: Brookline, Framingham, Chelmsford, Wayland. There are others too, but those are the ones that I know about right now. There are other towns considering it. Natick, Westwood, Amherst are ones that I happen to know about. Now, the funding for electronic voting would be something we'd have to work out because it's variable. It depends on how much you outsource to the company itself. They will provide you with a complete turnkey system. I mean, you can have them come in and they will do everything for you, and that, of course, is the most expensive way to do it. Other communities, like Brookline, decided that they would make use of their own IT department and some facilities they have. You have to do certain wires and cables and that kind of thing. And so it really is variable. We did not have the ability to go and figure out what it would cost, although we did have some figures. They ranged anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000, and it would depend on what needed to be done and if you did a several-year contract or a one-year contract. So it would, there's a lot of flexibility in the funding. And obviously, anytime you undertake anything that costs a significant sum of money, you want to be very careful how you do it, and you have to decide not only whether it's feasible and whether it can really be utilized in your town, but whether it's worth the money. And we don't feel that we were the people to make that decision, but we think that another committee would be able to do that, particularly some people who had a lot of technical expertise. We feel that the committee we suggest would hopefully consist of people with a lot of technological experience. So the conclusions to our thinking on this, and the reason we bring it before you in the form of an article, and I believe you have the article, do you? It was sent to you.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
We think it has the potential to attract more people to town meeting, and we think anytime you get more people to town meeting, the better the quality of the decision. It would strengthen, and this is something we don't always talk about, selectmen, moderator, town meeting, all of this in our town, our whole, the structure of our town, the way it runs, is that we have a balance, a checks and balances. We have the moderator, we have the selectmen, we have the selectmen, and of course, the town administrator, town meeting, and it all should work in harmony and in balance. And we feel that the better you can make town meeting work, the better the town will be governed. So we think that this is a very good way to promote that. So therefore, we think it would promote more effective and efficient town government, which was our charge. And therefore, we are recommending to you that you approve the article that would set up a committee to take what we have done and take it a little bit further, and then whatever recommendations they make would be the ones that the town meeting would get to vote on ultimately. So I will try to answer any questions if you have any questions to us. There's an awful lot of material on this, so.
Thank you. Just to be clear, the article is to ask the moderator to appoint a committee of 7 citizens to investigate this further and make recommendations to the town, as opposed to being an article to, let's do it.
Right. No,
Just wanted to be clear on that.
It would be premature for us to offer it, to do it right now. You really need, other communities also have found the same thing. When Wayland, for example, decided to do it, it took them 2 or 3 years, because you have to work out all the details, and then you have to acquaint many people. Now, we've done a lot of this groundwork with our committee, but people need to be comfortable with it's a different way of doing things. We make change slowly in Hingham, as we all know. So we wouldn't want to be precipitous about anything. And there's also the issue of funding. But, when you think about the high cost of making a bad decision on town meeting floor, the cost of doing something that would make our decisions more accurate and would involve more people in a better way, there's maybe a good cause to spend a little money on it. But that's where we are right now, and we do welcome, your input, because lots of people need to know about it and, explore it.
Comments, questions?
Well, I worked under 2 systems.
I beg your pardon?
I
You
worked
on-
under 2 systems.
Oh, all
I worked
right.
in the House of Representatives when they made the change to electronic voting. And there were many people who did not like that, because exactly the reason you said. The shouters couldn't shout. They had to go for individual vote, and and if you watch it on C-SPAN, it's a very positive experience, because you can watch the ballots unfold. In the other system, where I had an occasion to visit, was the British House of Parliament, where they have
They shout all the time. They don't wait for the votes.
Even when they're happy.
Even when they're happy, and more importantly, they had 2 lines in the rugs in the floor. And why are those lines in the rugs in the floor between the 2 sides of the house? That's because you have to stand behind those lines so the sword you carry doesn't reach the other person. So I said, that's not, obviously they haven't handed in this 1,000-year-old system how it's going to work. So you're right to the question of, I think the thing that intrigues me about it is the privacy issue, and the fact that people's vote really, in this occasion, does count. We moved on to it in our own voting processes here in town for that same reason. So if there's a way we can make it work, it certainly has merits at first blush to pursue, because it does ensure the integrity of the vote. And that's the thing that would intrigue me about it, so.
Well, that's how we feel.
Having been on the committee and now being the liaison, I am 100% behind this study. And I think for all the reasons that you've heard, but if we as a town want to keep open town meeting, we have to find a way to make it more inviting to people, to make everyone feel that their vote counts. I think the cost of this is small in comparison, and by the time Hingham actually implements it, it will be significantly smaller, as we do move slow, deliberately. I'll say deliberately. But the value of the vote, if you're voting on a $20 million, $10 million, $50 million project, and you can invite more people to town meeting to vote, that's the right thing to do, so that we can keep open town meeting as long as we can. And with the privacy of the vote, once it's cast and once the counts are done, I think you will have less, you'll still have grumbling, but you will have less grumbling from, say, the people in the back of the house that say, that wasn't what I heard. If you've had, because it was a very interesting experience, because the entire time we've lived in Hingham, we sit in the front of the room. If you sit in the back of the room, it is a very different experience. And I think with electronic voting, all of the guesswork, all of the trials and tribulations go away. And again, the cost is very small. If you can get 500 more people to come, it's worth it. So I like it.
Oh, good, good. I'm
Like
glad.
he likes it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Well, I am very intrigued and excited by this possibility. I did attend the demonstration. I thought it was way cool. And
She wanted to play video games.
that's important.
cool.
They're way cool. That's
It was
important
way cool.
because, the point that I wanted to add.
Type that right. Way cool.
Way cool.
I'm going to explain that right now. I think that one point that you haven't mentioned about why it's a good idea to go in this direction, I like all the other ideas too, all the other reasons are correct, is that I feel that to the younger generation,
You're
it
right.
sends a message that this is not a fossil,
Yep.
this is serious business.
That's a really good point.
Because I know that there are people who attend town meeting and are just think this is, whatever they think about the business we're doing, they think it's the dumbest way to do it that you could possibly think up. And it's not the dumb way, it's just an old way. And so I think that all of the other reasons I'm excited about, but there's an additional sort of marketing aspect to it for town meeting to try to let people know that Hingham takes this business seriously, as you said, and this could be part of it. That said, I know there's a great deal more to work out, and our moderator may not be convinced, and he's the guy, so I'm all for this article. My only question about it was, this is a tiny point, but 7 seems like a big number for this committee. It's a committee of 7 people, and, I mean, there's 7 people on the whole government study committee studying the whole government, so I just wondered,
Well,
what
it's
was the thinking behind that?
It's a standard kind of a committee that is usually proposed. And I would think, who am I to suggest anything to the moderator, but I would think that he would include people like somebody from our IT department, some people who are really savvy in the technological department, and who were open to, a new way of doing things. And obviously, he's new to the job himself, Mr. Puzo is, so he's not gonna jump in with something that's really gonna be different
Yeah.
2 years after he's become
Well, we do have citizens who are quite,
we have
have the
lots of people,
technological expertise that you're
lots of people in
looking for. We just had a lengthy discussion about how overworked our IT people are, so I'm sure that we can find volunteers with equivalent expertise. I just wondered why 7, because it seemed large for the
just the
task.
standard way, just like we thought we ought to give them a little seed money. The 10,000 was the standard member, but one of our members was feeling rather parsimonious that night. And because she was in
spell
that
that?
kind of a mood to keep peace in the family, we said, all right, we'll make it only 5. I mean, who knows what it's gonna be. It's
7's not a bad number, because by the time, as this evolves, there is a lot of work talking to each of the towns that are doing it, and then you end up talking to the vendors. So to spread the work out, I think 7's okay.
I'm just going to send that consideration along to the advisory committee to think about, because I realize that this board is not going to be appointing them, because I'm thinking 7 people, where would we get these 7
Yeah.
people? But that's just
I
a
would-
concern.
Just a standard way, that's all.
I would agree with you, Edna. My experience has been never have a committee bigger than 8.
No, for sure.
It just, in all the management studies, say if you want to get something done, keep it reasonable.
I'm thinking 5, but that's just me.
5 would work,
No,
too.
I don't think
7's
we're
good.
invested in one
Yeah.
member or the other. It was just a standard format that
Well, maybe the advisory committee could think about that when they.
If the moderator wanted to weigh in and have a different number
Yeah,
and
yeah.
consult with other people, I don't think our committee was.
That was my only
We're not
thought about
married
it,
to any
but,
number.
Very
Maybe up
enthusiastic
to
movie.
7.
Yeah, maybe up to
Maybe
7.
up to
And
7.
the moderator could appoint the people that he feels,
Because
Can
you may,
contribute.
you may get a tremendous amount of people wanting to participate in this.
well, in which case, great.
We
That's
hope.
7 is
We
great.
hope.
If we don't-
Yeah, and we'd want to think about it, because there'd be
Yeah.
a certain amount of, you'd have to introduce the concept to various groups within town. So you'd want some people to talk to, I don't know, the League of Women Voters comes to mind. You'd want other people to talk to the school department, various groups within town, so that they'd understand that they weren't going to be electrocuted by the machine or something. You know, so there is a little
But
hesitancy.
you have the issue
something.
of privacy and the concern about that.
that's-
That's an excellent, how do you protect that?
Oh,
And,
that came up in our meetings, too. It was a concern. It is, and there is good answer to it. Yes, the privacy you can set the system up to record the votes, for example, in a representative town meeting, such as, well,
You know who voted for what, yeah.
Yeah.
they
shows up
want
right
to
on the
know.
screen.
They
You
want
should,
to-
'cause they're
they
elected
want to be-
officials.
Excuse my back here. They want to be recorded, or a representative, an elected representative wants to be recorded, so his constituents knows how he votes on various
Like the House of
issues.
Representatives.
However, at a town meeting in Wayland, they delete the, after the meeting is over, they delete it all, so that there's no tracking of how individual people vote. And they can, the technical people can explain to you the way they do that. But yeah,
Okay, well-
that's important.
Lots more discussion to come, obviously, and this is just the beginning, but I know the committee is looking for a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen to the advisory committee. I'd entertain a motion on recommending this article to the advisory committee for
I'll make a
passage.
motion that we support the Governing Committee, Study Committee, a recommendation on electronic voting at town meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate
Next
your
up.
support.
will be. Okay.
Are you going to kind of piggyback right on this?
I'm gonna use her written, you'll see it in our handout that we did, she did on electronic voting though. But two of the points that were raised were respect for voters' time and the concern about long waits for quorum. And certainly that's the goal of this article. It's similar to what was proposed last year, which was to reduce the quorum to 200. The thought was to try to, didn't want to come back to town meeting with the same proposal, but also, I don't know if you, last year it lost by 2 votes at just the perfect time for a vote, and it should have passed, but it didn't. But the thought is that first night of town meeting is not a problem. It's the second night of town meeting, or after the initial quorum, where quickly the numbers dissipate. And so the thought was that if we went with 200, there'd be much shorter waits at town meeting. I mean, my personal sense is, yes, it's the obvious. You're going to save time because you're not going to wait around as long. But I actually think it'll increase participation at town meeting because there's people like me who have left advisory committee and I'm still at town. I still like town meeting, but I work in town, I come home, and I have the choice. Second night of town meeting, am I going to run home and grab a little dinner and then go back out, or am I going to go right there? If town meeting's going to start right away, first night of town meeting, I go right there. I know it's going to start. Second night of town meeting, I know it's not going to start. I go home and I grab dinner. And and I like town, I'm like a groupie there. So I think there's got to be more of me. And there are the nights, I'm sure, people go home for dinner intending to go back out,
And then not
they don't go back
right.
out. So I actually think this will have the effect of not only just saving time, but I think it should increase town participation. And who knows, there's going to be the occasional year where instead of having 3 nights of town meeting, we're going to have 2 because we didn't sit around for an hour and a half waiting for a town meeting. I'm sure you've seen there, you're dialing for people to show up, and you're saying, just come in. You don't have, I've had, had that call. Please come. You just have to walk in. You don't even have
Did
to
I make that call last year?
you don't even have to stay. You can just run. I was home working on a call for a client, and I couldn't get out and it couldn't get out. Please come in, just show up and walk right back out, and people do it. And so that's not more, so having the higher quorum at 300 is not really getting 300 people at the meeting, it's just having someone rotate through the door in their pajamas and go back out. I mean, I think all of us want to save town meeting. I know there's a group that thinks if we just tried harder to get more people at town meeting, we could do it. I think there's been a lot of efforts at that. I think, if you try Hingham Sports Partnership, when they're trying to get people out, they try to encourage people to stay, they don't stay. The schools, when they're trying to get people out, again, people don't necessarily stay. It would be great if everybody stayed. People are busy. I know there's a sentiment of town population has grown, quorum has stayed the same. Why can't we get more people? I think everyone who, people working in town, there's a lot more to do at home. Someone was saying, in the old days, I think it was Tom O'Donnell is in favor of this, which I think is important to note, given his longevity dealing with the town meeting. But he made the point, in the old days, people were sitting at farming, and this was their big night out. Let's go to town meeting.
Yeah, it was dark and they couldn't farm anymore.
They couldn't farm anymore. We have TV, we have computer, we have lots of alternatives. I think last year, the other thing that happened last year at town meeting is Selectmen in the end didn't support it. I think it was 2-1 against it. And advisory was a very close vote. So we kind of really thought hard about, do we want to bring it back? And we did go back to advisory before, I haven't seen the actual warrant article, but before we said, are we going to bring it forward, we went and talked to advisory. We didn't take an official vote. We had a sense of the meeting. I had the sense, the count that we all kind of came up with was 10-4, 5 against. So it's not quite as close. I don't know that Tom will get out of town meeting. I'm hoping he will. I think that should make a difference, and I'm hoping that we can get you guys to get on board and support it in the name of, it's really, how do you defend 200 versus 300 on a different night? It's a little bit of a splitting the baby, but it's dealing with a problem that we have to deal with, and I do think it's one quest at trying to save town meeting.
I agree with everything Linda said. It seems so counterintuitive to say the quorum on the second night should be less. But history has proved this. And I do think if we eventually get electronic voting in, if we do this, you will see people come. And if we can smooth out the order of the articles. So I think this is a good try at getting people to town meeting.
I would say that there's 20 to 25 towns at least that have no quorum.
That's scary to me. I know Eva did the research, and is none, like
None.
0. So whoever shows up,
Well, Hull has no quorum, and you show up at 7 o'clock and town meeting starts. It's quite something.
That was the discussion I had with Linda.
Right.
I was one of the two, and that's where my head was at. And the reason for that is the Marshfield experience, where they went to none. What it did is it put everyone's vote, and you tie it to the computer system, and now that makes everybody very important. And I recognize that, as Edna said, we change slowly.
Exactly.
So if I can't get to 0, I don't get there unless I take the first step, so I'll follow
Yeah.
that issue. So if this will get us there, I'm all for it.
I think this is a good compromise too, versus do nothing and small changes.
That's a very nice nod to the past while moving into the future. We like to do that. And I think I may have been the first person to hear Tom O'Donnell's opinion on a warrant article in 45 years when I went up to him after town meeting, right after town meeting last year, and I said, won't it be great to be able to speak up and have opinions? And he said, well, I think the only thing I really felt strongly about this year was the quorum article. So I think, he said, I don't think it will make any change in how many people come to town meeting. It just means we'll get the work done faster. And that made a lot of sense to me. So this is very straightforward. I don't know, any other questions or comments? Or? Okay.
Do we know where Mr. Puzo stands on this?
He does not want to take a public position, but I would note that it was him who got Tom to come along and speak up.
That's, as Laura said, we did not know that last year.
Do we need to support this one in the
Yes.
same way?
Yeah, I think
All
we-
right, I'll make a motion to support the Government Study Committee's proposal with respect to the quorum at town meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. 2 out of 3.
That's pretty good.
Yes.
Okay, Phil, it's up to you. You're the closer.
I'm sure each issue stands on its own. And I'm Phil Edmondson, and thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve in the Government Study Committee and with great colleagues, and very thoughtful conversation, as I'm sure you can imagine. The article I'm speaking about is the proposal to make the treasurer-collector position appointed rather than elected, a subject which you're all familiar with, have heard in the past. We're bringing it to you in a slightly different form, and I'll explain that briefly. I won't take a long time to review the reasons why we want to do this, in part because you have heard all these and I believe supported them in the past, but briefly, the benefits that our committee feels would arise from this change are that we would open the field of candidates to a much broader group of candidates, that there are certainly folks who are intimidated by the electoral process, and it is, despite the fact that all of you have survived it quite well. Those of us that have been on it and have gone through the process, I think, can understand how some people can find that challenging. And so limiting the pool of candidates by having an elected position is something that is not in the town's best interest. We are limited to town residents by having the position be elected. And while we have been blessed with a number of wonderful treasurer collectors from within our ranks, there's just no denying the fact that, again, opening the candidate pool to a larger pool can only improve upon that situation. And we think there's also a benefit to integrating the position of treasurer collector into our overall management team and our finance and accounting team, rather than having it stand alone, is a benefit to the town. Now, we make all these points with nothing but the most glowing understanding and feelings towards our present treasurer collector and the practices of the town. But it is not our job to review the performance of any individual in their position, rather to look at the structure of town government and try to look beyond the performance of individuals to make a recommendation to the town as to what we think is the best structure for matters like this. So you might ask, why are we here again? We talked about this issue last year. You may recall that the town meeting voted overwhelmingly in favor of this change, but it did not pass at the ballot and lost by a very few number of votes. And so how would we do that differently this year? And there are two things I would point out to you. One is that this committee will make a greater effort to communicate and make the proposal better known using the newspaper or forums that might become available to us in order to publicize the matter. And I think we can do better than we did last year. Second is that we're coming to you with a slightly different process, one that requires a state ballot approval or an approval from the legislature, which we hope would not be withheld and have reason to expect would not be withheld, given that other towns have successfully used this process. And what we like about this process is that it allows us to write an explanatory note on the ballot. So we're working under the supposition that a number of people went into the ballot box last year not knowing enough detail. The process of the town ballot does not allow us to write an explanation on that alongside to try to inform the voters, but the state ballot process that we're now proposing would allow us to do that. So we're hopeful that that would make the voters more educated, and I guess we're convinced that so many of us who have been involved in town government who've seen this to be a positive change, that if we can just get the message out better, that we're hopeful that this change would be adopted. So I know I've been brief, but I'm trying to be respectful of your time. And again, I know that you've all heard these issues many times in the past, so I'd perhaps take a breath and ask for your questions and hopefully receive your support.
Well, I was a supporter of this before and would be again. The process that you're explaining is we would go to the general court for prior to submitting the ballot, or?
No, if... or
are we appealing?
Do you recall the exact order of things?
I don't, except as it was explained to us by...
Could you come to the microphone? Thank you.
Or Ted says
Mr. McMillan, maybe you know better, Ted, but it would go to ballot. There would be an explanation on the ballot for the rationale behind the measure. If approved, then it would go back to the selectmen to make a recommendation or request of the legislature to pass the measure in the legislature. Is that consistent with your?
My conversations with Alec on it were that it was a two-step process, that you would be asking in this article for a legislative petition that would allow us in 2014 at the annual election to place an item on the ballot at the annual election on this question, and there would be the descriptive part that you're talking about. So as opposed to what you did last year, the town proposed was really town meeting vote followed by the election a week later, no descriptive commentary on the ballot at the election, and then the answer would be determined at that point in time. Now, those two steps are going to be separated by a year process.
Year plus, at least the ultimate approval would be a year plus,
Year and
which
a
is
half, actually,
year-
right?
yeah, with the legislative process as well. And that's one of the detriments to the process. But the government study committee determined that our failure, aside from not publicizing it generally in the Journal or elsewhere, was not being able to educate the electorate within the town. And the only mechanism to do that is to go through this process so an explanation can appear in the ballot.
The question I have, because I support this, I think this is great, I think this is innovative, a little different. What is the process to protect the current incumbent in the job?
I think there are some options for that. Certainly, first, there is a protection built into this electoral process so that the existing treasurer-collector position is protected for the remainder of a 3-year term. Beyond that, obviously, the selectmen and the town management have the opportunity to take whatever steps they might wish to contractually with a current or future treasurer-collector.
So last year, the board and the current treasurer, Gene Montgomery, expressed some concern last year, and the board addressed it by signing an agreement with Ms. Montgomery to serve as the appointed position should that occur, and to preserve her benefits that might get erased in that process.
So you would have the opportunity to do that
Okay,
again.
meaning the longevity, the vacation time.
Correct. Because
and
right now, she gets no longevity, no
step.
vacation, no sick time. As an elected official, although, she works as an employee essentially here every day, she doesn't have to be. She's an elected official. She doesn't report to me or anybody else, and so she doesn't get any of those benefits. And this would, give those benefits to her.
And it's very important to protect those benefits, but as Ted says, whether it's, any of us who have been elected or are elected, there, to the best of my knowledge, there are no hours of service, so you don't really need to have vacation time listed because you really aren't obliged to work a certain number of hours. You're obliged to carry out the functions of the office. I think in the sense that we are recommending instead is that the position be filled more in the practice of a traditional employee-employer relationship.
Is there, and maybe this is a question for the personnel board after all this happens, is there then the ability to say, let's say Jean's been here 20 years, to then grant her 20 years of service?
That's what the agreement was, that we
Okay.
signed with her to preserve that.
Okay.
Because she lost all her service when,
Yep.
Jean was an employee of the town before she ran for office and became an elect, so she lost that that longevity issue. And so those are some of the points. And the general point, moving from an elected to an appointed, I think she wanted to be,
So there is room to do that, though.
well, that was what we had done.
All right.
We had done that last year.
We did that last year.
I think the board will also, following what you had said, Phil, do more work on publicizing what they did in that agreement. I certainly was approached by people who said, well, we really like Jean, and why do you want to get rid of her? Well, the answer is we don't, and that was not what we intended in that article last year, and so I think we want to spend more time talking to people about it, try to get people to understand that that's not the goal.
Just a curiosity, do we have any information that says why the vote that failed at the ballot box? Were you able to research anything?
I'm really not even sure how to do that.
Well, other than what I just told you, I mean, I heard that from several people.
That's what I heard.
They voted
Yeah, I
against
think
it because
just-
they
all we have is
thought she
anecdotes.
did
They
such a
wanted
great
Jean to
job.
be the treasurer.
And I think you're right, Ted. I think part of the job, if you support this, and that would be primarily our job, but to anything else you could add to it, would be to make sure that message gets across, that we are putting in place all the protections for a valued town employee that she deserves.
And I think that agreement, publicizing that will send the message that we seek to send, which is that this is, we'd like to say in the current treasurer collector's interest, as well as the town's, to move forward in this direction. I strongly support her continuing in the position. She's done a terrific job, and I think that what people don't really understand about this role is that we're in the 21st century. Town has a budget of over $80 million. We have a AAA bond rating. We have debt. The treasurer is involved with placing the assets of the town and investments. It's a highly technical job. It is not what it was 100 years ago. And what scares me, frankly, really scares me about the current arrangement is that there is, should the current treasurer decide to step down at some point for whatever reason, there is no guarantee that her replacement would have any qualifications whatsoever. If you did not have a candidate or two candidates or any candidate that was actually qualified to hold this job, we would not have a treasurer collector with the necessary professional qualifications to hold this job. And all of the hard work that we do to ensure the town against, to ensure the town's financial stability and ensure all of our assets against risk, it's very scary to me that someone could move into that role with no qualifications whatsoever,
Well,
and there'd be nothing we could do about it at all.
And I think just to add to that, that if we then imagined ourselves saying, okay, now's the time, now that we're questioning the person in the role, now's the time when we want to consider a change like this, we can all envision a very political situation.
Yes, I mean, you could.
And a vote
Yep.
being made not on the basis of what's in the best interests of the town, but rather, do you like this candidate or not?
Personality,
Do you
yep.
like this personality or not? And so I think it's a very important point, Laura, that we would rather make this change, and we recommend this change at a time when things are good and stable. And we don't want to wait for a time when they are not, or when they are threatened.
Our last two treasurers, our current treasurer and our previous treasurer, were both assistant treasurers before they ran for office and became elected. That's succession planning. We can't do that in this current environment. If our assistant, which happens to live in Hull, that's it. Nothing we can do. We can train her as much as we want, but our
She
assistant
can't
can
have
never
the
be. And so, that's the one department where we have that unique issue. I can't help the town do any succession planning because it's just not possible. I can't pick the next elected person.
So those are the concerns, and the reason why this board supported this move last year very strongly, and I hope we'll commit ourselves to the publicity campaign to explain that this is about ensuring that we have our current treasurer collector going forward and a system to make sure that we always have a qualified treasurer collector as we have now. Any other comments or questions?
Nope.
Okay, let's take a vote on this one, too.
I'll make a motion that we.
Oh, wait, no, I do have another comment or question. There has been a concern raised about an article that has the exact language of the law that we request in it.
Yes, the selectmen have, for at least as long as I've worked for the town, have not put the actual language that they wanted the legislature to pass in the article, because I guess town did it at one point in time several decades ago, and the legislature changed a word in the article, and then they
Gotta
said,
go back to
then
town
they said,
meeting?
well, now you gotta go back to town meeting and revote it, which would put this out a whole nother year. So it's usually been to request the selectmen to submit the legislation, and then, you know, certainly the selectmen, we take the legislation that you would looking for from the government study committee, but the actual wording doesn't appear at town meeting.
So I don't know how the committee would feel about that. We could handle it a couple of different ways.
Advisory could do it.
Yeah, well, if you
In the
wanted to
recommended
reconsider it
motion.
and have us put an article on that doesn't have the language in it, we could do that. Or it could just be advisory's recommendation. But it might be cleaner to, if you agreed with our recommendation, it might be cleaner to have you resubmit without the language of the act, so that we're all supporting the same thing. And I don't know.
And we're not authorized, I can't
I
authorize
know,
the
but if you
change
want,
right now.
no, of course not. You would have to
Us
meet
having a
and
formal
discuss it.
meeting. So it's however you would like it.
Well, would you be willing to reconsider that?
I mean, we might have a scheduling problem, though, because when are we going to get together to do that? Oh, we have a meeting Tuesday. I knew that.
That was a
Modify the
test.
agenda, you have enough time.
No, we have to change the agenda within 48 hours, or be, you know.
Edna went out with the reporter, Judy. Yep, she's just in the hall.
But you have time to change the agenda.
You know, I'll ask, I'm leaving very early in the morning, but I'll ask Edna if she could amend the agenda.
And we can vote it next week.
Well, we can still vote the concept.
Yes, we can vote
Yes.
support in principle.
That would be appreciated.
And then, once we, you know, and
Because
we
we meet
can,
with the.
we don't have to vote
advisory.
again.
Yeah.
If you bring us another article, you know, when we create the warrant, we vote to put it on the warrant. We don't have to do this all
You
again.
can just have a vote that, you know.
Just the headline
amends this
there.
article by taking out the actual words, if you'd prefer, or.
Well, I'm not sure what well, let's ask town administrator to help you figure out what the
I think it would be
right
best for the
wording is.
board. It sounds like all three of you are in agreement with the concept, and I think someone mentioned just voting the concept right
Yeah.
now.
Why don't-
Send
why
the
don't
article
why
off
don't
to
we just
advisory.
call it
Yeah,
Main
Modify
Week?
the words as
I'll make a
needed.
motion
top
that we
line.
support the Government Study Committee concept relative to the position of treasurer-collector.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you
Thank you
very
very
much for
Good
all your
job,
work,
guys.
the whole committee. These are three great recommendations, in my opinion.
They're good.
And, I hope they
Mary
pass.
wants me to write more of
I
them.
laughed out loud when I heard the
Very much.
question, so.
And unless anybody has thought of something to report from the holidays, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Fiesta Bowl.
Then say second.
Thank you very much.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.